abducted by a robot that looked and sounded just like his grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
And he also said he was taken to a huge underground cave that was filled with other robots. Now, this sounds like something that a 5-year-old boy would make up.
Oh, sure.
But what's really interesting about it is that when the grandmother finally woke up, she found that she had been dragged from her tent and felt a really strange pain in the back of her neck. Now, she discovered an odd puncture wound, making her believe that foul play was involved and that someone or something did indeed abduct her grandchild.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that one's weird, and Adam relates it in much more detail in the 411 episode, but it's a story that if you start looking at these Mount Shasta disappearances, it comes up every time, because it's one of these really weird, bizarre stories, and it goes along with all the other weird stuff that happens on this mountain.
Right.
The last one that we're going to discuss tonight is the most famous story of a disappearance, on or around Mount Shasta. This is the one that if you Google any of this is the one you're going to find. And it is very odd. But it involves a gentleman named Carl Landers. So on May 25th of 1999, 69-year-old Carl Herbert Landers set out with friends Milton Gaines, age 64, and Barry Gilmore, age 60, to climb to the summit of Mount Shasta. Now, Carl's friends described him as an experienced climber, hiker, and distance runner, and in excellent shape. For 30 years, he had run every morning and even completed the Boston Marathon in 5.5 hours. Now, that sounds fast to me.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I'm assuming that if you can complete a marathon, period,
yeah,
you're better than I am.
It would take me 5 days to do that.
If you start a marathon, you're better than I am.
Right.
But in his later years, he had this ambition to climb the highest peaks in every county of California. So in May of 1998, a year before he disappeared, he climbed Mount Shasta, but he didn't make it all the way to the summit, and he vowed that he was going to come back and he was going to get to the peak. So the night before the group's visit to Mount Shasta this is on May 22nd of 99, the three men stayed together in a motel. So on Monday, the 23rd, they left the motel at 4 a.m., and they had all the equipment. They had ice axes, crampons, climbing clothing, all the gear they would need. And they left for the trailhead at Bunny Flat, which is one of the locations that you can start from. And this area was
Bunny
covered
Flat
in
seems a lot more my speed rather than that Avalanche Gulch thing.
That Bunny Flat is where Adam learned to snow ski.
Exactly.
It's the Bunny Flat. It's not even the Bunny Slopes that like the 5-year-olds are doing.
No.
It's the Bunny Flat where you pretty much just have somebody push you.
As long as I can stand up, I'm not going to move,
But that's where this group started out. And as I was saying, it's covered in snowdrifts even though it's May.
Right, right.
Again, a place I'm not really looking to live.
No.
If I hear that you have snow and it's May, I don't want to be there. I don't like being that cold. So from there, they hiked 4 miles to a place called Horse Camp. The next night, they camped at a location on the mountain called 50/50 Plateau. Now, that's just below Lake Helen, which is a popular camping spot covered in boulders, and a lot of the climbers will use this as kind of a way station, and they'll wait for the right light and weather conditions before the final push to the summit. Now, Carl was taking a medication called Diamox to combat the effects of altitude sickness, but he was also suffering from diarrhea and had to leave the tent several times during the night to relieve himself in the middle of, strong winds.
That's a terrible trip.
I'm telling you,
if you got diarrhea and strong winds, isn't that an old saying? Don't poop into the wind or something like that.
I think it's you don't spit in the wind.
Well, it rhymes with spit.
Don't do the other either.
Yeah.
Man, I got to tell you, there's not a convenient time. Maybe there is. There's a convenient time to have diarrhea. Maybe when you're like, behind on your reading.
Yeah, when you're trying to get out of something, maybe, but
when you're like, my feet haven't been numb in a while.
Yeah. Right now, I could really go for not feeling the lower half of my body. That would be fantastic.
Yeah. It'd be a great time to have some diarrhea. Climbing a mountain, not the time.
Not the time.
Okay. So in the morning, he still complained of not feeling the greatest, but he left the 50-50 location without his friends to get a head start up to Lake Helen. Bad idea.
That's dumb, man. That's dumb.
Don't. Now, hypothermia and dehydration is not a good combination on a mountain climb and can often lead to trouble. I'm not even sure why I read that sentence. I might as well have said, grass is green and the sky is blue. I mean,
right.
It's just like it just, that is a fact.
That's a
period.
Duh moment if I ever heard one.
Now, the lake is a short distance. It's only around 650 feet around the side of the mountain from the campsite, and it's just at a slightly higher elevation. So it really wasn't like he was going that far. Now, his group said that he was wearing 2 to 3 layers of clothing, including a rust-colored coat, ski pants, and boots with crampons. Now, Milton and Barry saw Carl disappear around the curve in the mountain, and that was the last time he was ever seen. Now, his friends packed up and subsequently left the camp around 30 minutes after Carl had started out. They left their kit at the camp as they intended to check out Lake Helen's weather and snow conditions and then go grab their stuff from 50-50 later. But after a short time, Barry returned to the tent, which was still at 50-50, because he wasn't feeling the greatest either. He needed some Imodium too. Any experienced hiker knows that it's not a good idea for a group to split up, and at this point, all 3 of the climbers had become separated. So it's gone from bad to worse. Now, old Milt, he got to Lake Helen on his own, and he asked one of the rangers if he had seen anyone passing through on the way to the mountain. And he told him that he had seen only one person, so Milt tried to catch up, but subsequently discovered that he was way too fast to be Carl and wearing the wrong clothes, and he turned back and asked the ranger again, but the ranger said, no, nobody else has come through here. So Milt went back to 50-50 to try to catch up with Barry, who was probably, behind the bush.
Yep, right.
And he kind of thought, well, Carl will be back there too. And this was around 5 o'clock in the afternoon. But Carl wasn't back at the tent. He had pretty much vanished, and his kit was still left at the campsite. So Milt decided to hack back down to Bunny Flats to meet Adam, who was still standing out there with his skis on flat ground. But at around 8 p.m., he notified the Siskiyou County Sheriff that Carl had disappeared. Now, Milt left Carl's gear behind just in case he turned up at the 50-50 camp.
Sure.
He didn't want to leave him with nothing, so he left his stuff up there. Now, the Siskiyou County Sheriff's Department started searching the area the next morning, which was May 26th, after Carl was reported missing. Now, they used a grid pattern, and, you know what that is. I mean, so
sure,
they spread out so that they're searching, a certain area so they can say, okay, we've searched this area. We're moving to the next block.
Mm-hmm.
And they also had a National Guard air ambulance helicopter and a California Highway Patrol helicopter equipped with an infrared sensing device. Now, a ground search team was also sent out, and they were on skis, horses, and foot, and they were made up of U.S. Forest Rangers and Shasta Mountain Guides. Now, they were joined by volunteers from surrounding counties and southern Oregon, and also several members of the Orinda Roadrunners, which was a club that Carl had belonged to.
Meep.
And because he was a runner,
right?
So all these people have come around to search for this guy. A helicopter pilot took professional climbers to the summit, and they started coming down the mountain using different routes at different points on the compass. Now, you got people going up, around, and now starting at the top, coming down.
Yeah.
If he's up there, they're going to find him.
That's an extensive search.
They knew where he was going,
yeah.
Or at least where he wanted to go, and they knew where he had been. So, I mean, really, they're searching almost the whole mountain.
Yeah.
Even though it was reasonable to think that he would have been in this location.
Right.
But they can't find him there, so they have to broaden out their search. Now, the search and rescue effort was headed up by a man named Grizz Adams.
It got to be a nickname.
Not his given name, I assume.
Right.
But he had overseen over 400 search and rescue operations. So, this guy was no slouch. He knew what was going on, and even in an interview with David Paulides from the Missing 411 books, he said, "In 35 years, I've never had this happen to me. We were all over that mountain. He was not on the mountain. We brought canines in. They didn't pick him up. We flew around it. We dropped guys at the summit. They came down all sides. They couldn't find him. They talked to people who were on the mountain. They didn't see him. There's snow around the path where he was, and nobody went outside the path." So when Paulides asked Grizz Adams what he thought happened to Carl Landers on the mountain, he said, "That's the $1 million question. He either went up or in, but he's not on it." To this day, now 20 some odd years later, nothing has ever been found, not a trace of his equipment, and it's assumed that Carl disappeared somewhere between the 50-50 Plateau and Lake Helen, as no tracks were spotted off the trail. It's a distance of only 650 feet, an area which is relatively flat with no dense brush or tree cover. The topography of the area around Mount Helen makes it very difficult for someone to disappear, and there's no obvious crevices, nor is there any dense vegetation or trees which would obstruct the view of a body. The lake was also thoroughly searched, as was the forest, on a grid basis at the base of the mountain. Even cadaver-sniffing dogs were dispatched and found nothing. So what's more, this is not some desolate spot. There were at least 50 to 100 people around Lake Helen at the time that he disappeared, and they never saw him. The only evidence that he was there at all was his abandoned backpack at the 50-50 Plateau.
That's just wild to, it's like we talked about in the Missing 411. You bring in the cadaver dogs and stuff, and they can't even find you, which is just crazy.
Yeah, and one thing that always comes up in these cases is that hypothermia can cause people to become delirious, and they begin to feel that they're hot, and so they take their clothes off.
Right.
That explains why a lot of these people that die from exposure are found either naked or in their underwear.
Yeah.
Because that's what hypothermia does to your body. Because people that don't know would look at it and go, "Why in God's name would that guy take off his clothes? It was freezing." Well, to him, it wasn't, because he was dying from hypothermia.
Yeah.
The other idea is that, maybe he was attacked by an animal. And there are black bear and coyote around the area, but they stay more down around the base. They're not way up on the mountain.
Right.
So
and they're not going to hide his clothes.
Right. Or eat them.
Right.
And there would have been evidence of that, of an animal attack. But where he was at the time of his disappearance, there's not predatory wildlife up there. So what happened to him? One idea is that, Carl led a double life, that maybe he needed to disappear and start over. But that really doesn't seem likely. Even his wife in an interview said that when he left, she thought there's something that's not good about this trip.
Mm-hmm.
She thought that, and it wasn't that, he was fixing to disappear, but some people speculated that maybe his friends were lying, that Carl was never really there, and the whole trip was a ruse to explain his disappearance, and he was taken off somewhere else. But that's also unlikely, because the permit was required, and you have to sign for it. So we have evidence that Carl was indeed there at the base and started out on the trip.
Yeah. So he was actually there, and they have proof.
Right. And so the other idea is that, well, maybe Carl's friends, did a number on him, but again, if there was no evidence that they had any type of ill will towards Carl, and there would have been evidence of something.
Sure, sure, yeah.
If I'm going to take a guy up on a mountain and I'm going to, knock him off, it's going to be a challenge for me to be able to get his body off of that mountain. And as I said before, according to the ranger services, this area doesn't have really anywhere where you could dump a body, no open crevices, no heavy brush or anything where you could hide something like that. But not even finding his clothes or anything like that. I mean, it's almost like he either got sucked off the mountain or he found some way in or was taken inside.
Which fits with what people say, that it's either a hub for alien activity or that there is an underground base of some kind or underground city.
Yeah. And so you can see why this is the most famous disappearance story. It's only, a little over 20 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, there is no evidence, nothing has shown up, that would explain what happened to Carl. So it's an unbelievable situation to have somebody just completely vanish. And then when you add in all of the mysterious circumstances that surround Mount Shasta, it really makes you begin to wonder, what the heck is going on over there?
Yeah, is there actually something happening that is beyond our understanding? Because you have disappearances a lot. Like you were saying before, you see these hikers that disappear and all that stuff, but there's usually always some kind of factor that lets you know it was natural causes or something like that. They don't have these mysterious details that missing 411 cases do. And it seems like all of the disappearances on Mount Shasta have those missing 411 elements to it.
Yeah, they sure do. And one thing I was really surprised is that in all of my research looking at this case in particular, that Bigfoot did not come up.
Yeah.
And there are some Bigfoot sightings in that area. And Bigfoot sightings are common in areas where missing 411 cases are.
Mm-hmm.
But, they don't really seem to connect to any of these disappearances, and certainly not the disappearance of Carl Landers. But it's a tragic story, but it's a mystery. And, it's just one of those things where you look back and you go, something weird happened to this guy.
Yeah, something real weird.
I mean, whatever it is, it's obviously something that was not what we would expect. They exhausted all of those possibilities.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if we can't figure it out this way, it's got to be something totally off the map.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's kind of what I think. I'm not going to say that I think it was aliens or anything like that. I don't know that. But I definitely think it's something that may be beyond our understanding.
Yeah. And it could be, I think I brought this up in the Missing 411. There's possibly, I hate to say this word because people will automatically go, oh, you're crazy, but something like a dimensional portal or something in that area that could pull you to another dimension you're walking down the trail and something opens up in front of you. You walk into it not realizing anything is different and it closes. Well, that's how you just disappear without footprints anywhere or anything like that. And we talked about that in Missing 411. That's possible there too, if you believe any of that stuff. But I also wonder if any of our listeners, because we got a lot of listeners in California,
right?
Have any of y'all been to Mount Shasta and experienced anything odd, or anybody that lives around there? Have you heard of these disappearances that we've talked about, or ones that we didn't talk about?
Yeah, and in my research, I found that there's a lot more that are not well documented. So those little stories are just hard to find, and a lot of them just are two hikers went up the mountain, never came back,
mm-hmm.
and they were never found.
Right.
And that's it. And there's a lot of those. Of course, the rangers will always say, well, there was obviously foul play, or something was up, something was amiss.
Right.
Because they don't have the details that they have in this particular story. But what do you guys think? I mean, we've given you a lot of information about the mountain itself and about the legends and the folklore and all the weird stuff that's happened. There's even a case where Air Force pilots saw two stationary blue lights over the mountain. They weren't moving.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't aircraft, and there were no light towers or anything like that for them to be seen. So, there's everything from UFOs to ancient civilizations
to reptilians
to dimensional portals, everything associated with this mountain. So what do you guys think? Is there a portal there? Is it an alien hub? What do you think's going on there? Let us know. Jump in our Facebook group and talk about this. Join us for our upcoming See You Live show. We'll discuss this more then, and we'll be able to take some questions and some thoughts from you guys as well.
Right.
So, but as always, please, as Adam said earlier, go rate and review us on iTunes, because it does help us get up the charts a little bit. It makes us easier to find, and it brings more folks into the graveyard. Check out our website. It's graveyardpodcast.com. And on the website, you will find links to buy Graveyard Tales merchandise. You can listen to the show, and you can become a patron. Again, we thank everyone who has donated their hard-earned money to help Adam and I continue to make this show better for you guys. So, until next time, we'll save you a seat in the graveyard.
See you soon.
Welcome to the Great Detectives of Old Time Radio from Boise, Idaho. This is your host, Adam Graham. If you have a comment, email it to me, box13@greatdetectives.net. Follow us on Twitter at Radio Detectives and become one of our friends on Facebook, facebook.com/Radio Detectives. Today's program is brought to you in part by the financial support of our listeners. You can send in a one-time donation with the Zelle app to box13@greatdetectives.net. Thank you to Randy for doing that. And you can also support the show via PayPal, support.greatdetectives.net, via mail to Adam Graham, P.O. Box 15913. That's 15913, Boise, Idaho 83715. And you can also become one of our ongoing Patreon supporters, patreon.greatdetectives.net. Thank you to Jenny for becoming our latest Patreon supporter at the rookie level of $2 or more per month. Again, thank you so much for your support, Jenny. And now it's time for today's episode of Dragnet. The original air date is March the 29th of 1955, and the title is The Big Death.
Ladies and gentlemen, the story you are about to hear is true. The names have been changed to protect the innocent. You're a detective sergeant. You're assigned to homicide detail. A man has been shot in a cheap hotel in the downtown area. There's no apparent motive for the attack. No lead to the identity of the assailant. Your job? Find him.
Dragnet, the documented drama of an actual crime. For the next 30 minutes, in cooperation with the Los Angeles Police Department, you will travel step by step on the side of the law through an actual case transcribed from official police files. From beginning to end, from crime to punishment, Dragnet is the story of your police force in action.
It was Tuesday, January 11th. It was cold in Los Angeles. We were working the day watch out of homicide detail. My partner's Frank Smith. The boss is Captain Lorman. My name's Friday. I was on my way into the office, and it was 5:26 a.m. when I got to room 42. Homicide.
Yeah. We just got the call, Skipper. Mm-hmm. Oh, he's on the way in. That's right. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, here he is now. Uh-huh. No, I haven't called him yet. Well, I didn't say anything. Okay, we'll keep in touch with him. Right. Bye.
What do you got, anything?
Yeah, shooting over on 5th. As soon as I check the crime lab, we can roll on it.
Mm-hmm. Who's the victim?
Guy named Arthur McNeil. WMA, 62 years.
Did he say anything?
No, he ran out.
Huh?
6 bullets in his head.
The Garnett Hotel was located on 5th Street between Turner and Banning. It was an old, run-down building. A wooden sign over the entrance advertised rooms, 75 cents per night, weekly rates available. Frank and I climbed one flight of wooden stairs that led to the lobby. By the time we'd gotten there, 2 black and white cars had arrived, and the uniformed officers were attempting to restore some sort of order in the place. We talked with them briefly, and then we met Mr. Ted Brendel, the night clerk who'd placed the original call.
I know what's going on, I tell you. No reason for me to try to hide nothing. I ain't mixed up in it.
We didn't say you were.
What?
I say we didn't say you were involved. We just want to find out what happened here.
Oh, come on into office. Can't hear a word you're saying. Come on. Come on, talk in the office. Now then, fella can hear yourself talk. Sit down.
Thank you.
Just throw the clothes on the floor, toss them down, and take a seat.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Now about the shooting.
I was just finishing up, and all of a sudden I hear these noises, like pow, pow. Loud, sharp.
Yeah.
Wasn't sure what they was at first. A lot of noise around here all the time. People falling out of bed, bottles breaking, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
It was loud enough, though. I figured I ought to take a look, so I went upstairs.
Yeah.
A couple other people were out in the halls trying to find out what the hullabaloo was all about. Wasn't anything to let anybody know.
Yes, sir.
Then I come to Mr. McNeil's room, 319 on the left.
Mm-hmm.
Door was open, wide. I looked in, there he was.
McNeil?
Yes, sir, laying right on the floor. Just kind of sprawled around like he was just dropped there.
Yeah.
I called to him. He yelled. Light wasn't on the room, couldn't see too good, didn't know right off, then I went in.
Yes, sir.
Dead.
Mm-hmm.
Called the cops, told them never to kill him, and said for him to come right then.
Did you go in the room at all?
Well, just to look at Mr. McNeil. As soon as I saw what happened, I turned around, run to the phone, and called the cops.
What can you tell us about this McNeil?
Oh, not much to say. Quiet, didn't cause no trouble, didn't drink, paid his rent on time.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any relatives in town that you know of?
Didn't hear him say nothing.
Is there anything else you might tell us about him?
No, nothing right off.
All right, thank you.
You going up to see the room now?
That's right.
Sure don't make much sense.
What's that?
Why anybody do it? Plain little guy. Nothing about him make him stand out, take any notice.
Mm-hmm.
Mind his own business. Got along with all the guests. Wasn't anybody paid any attention to him.
You got it wrong.
What?
Somebody did. 6:12 a.m. The crew from the crime lab arrived and began their investigation of the murder room. A canvass of the area was started in an attempt to find somebody who might have seen the killer. Frank and I went up to room 319. The appearance of the room indicated that there'd been a struggle before McNeil was killed. Clothing was scattered around the floor, tables were overturned. The bedding had been ripped from the bed and then torn apart. Pictures had been removed from the wall. Books were scattered all around the place. The drawers from the small desk in the bureau had been ransacked. Papers had been thrown around. While Lieutenant Lee Jones continued his investigation, Frank and I talked with the night clerk, Ted Brendel.
Do you know if McNeil carried large sums of money?
Huh?
Did McNeil carry much money with him, would you know?
Don't know as I can answer that. He never did flash any of it around. Guess he had enough to live on, though. Told you before, he always paid his rent on time.
Yeah.
Do you have any close friends you know of?
Only met one.
Who was that?
Girl.